Now, the developing story out of Iran. More than 24 hours after the U.S. bombed nuclear sites, it remains unclear whether Iran maintains some nuclear capabilities. And tonight, vows of retaliation, one Iranian official telling the UN Security Council its military will decide the timing, nature, and scale of its response. The U.S. warning of a heightened threat environment. And now President Trump is raising the possibility of regime change. A day after U.S. missiles struck Iranian nuclear sites, President Trump posted, "It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change?" But earlier, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that's not what the strikes were about.
This wasn't a regime change move. This was designed to degrade and/or destroy 3 nuclear sites related to their nuclear weaponization.
Satellite images of the deeply buried production facility at Fordow show holes indicating where the penetrating bombs hit, but damage assessment will take time.
In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation.
The Iranians have vowed to retaliate and that the attack would have everlasting consequences. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was asked about the possibility of protracted war.
Anything can happen in conflict, we acknowledge that, but the scope of this was intentionally limited. So Iran, in that sense, has a choice.
Tonight, there were also questions about whether before the strike, Iran could have moved near bomb-grade uranium, something Face the Nation anchor Margaret Brennan addressed with Rubio.
What is the U.S. assessment of how much nuclear material at those sites was moved prior to the attack? There has been talk for days about bombing of Fordow.
Well, look, we don't. No one will know for sure for days, but I doubt they moved it because you really can't move anything right now, and they can't move anything right now inside of Iran.
Republicans largely praise the strike, but many Democrats and some GOP lawmakers say Congress should authorize military action.
Congress needs to be notified, not after the fact, but in advance. We were not.
We haven't been briefed. They should have called us all back. And frankly, we should have debated this War Powers resolution that Ro Khanna and I offered instead of staying on vacation and doing fundraisers.
Hundreds of people gathered in Times Square for an anti-war protest. They later marched to Columbus Circle. Some are concerned the strike could stop any possibility of a treaty to end the spread of nuclear weapons.
I'm afraid that we will see a World War III that could be nuclear in its outcome. This is not just Trump's throwing a bunch of bombs in Iran. Iran is a massive nation.
Organizers say they'll continue to protest any violence and attacks in the Middle East. The State Department issued a worldwide security alert advising Americans to take caution if traveling overseas. They cite potential demonstrations against U.S. citizens and interrupted air travel across the Mideast. And today, a bulletin issued from the National Terror Advisory System warns of a higher threat environment in the U.S. The bulletin does not note any current specific threats, but says there's a greater chance of cyber attacks, violence, or anti-Semitic hate crimes.